If you choose not to provide coverage for independent contractors, you leave yourself open for a huge potential liability. We're talking about protecting the business.
Good evening, home care business advisors. We are here this evening with our friend and colleague and insurance professional, Tracey Forde. How are you doing, Tracey?
I'm awesome. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing excellent. I am looking forward to this segment where today we're actually talking about workers' compensation and just a topic of so many questions, so many unsaids. And I know with your 30-something years, 32 years, is that, Tracey?
Yes.
32 years of insurance experience. I know you're going to be able to unravel it all for me. So Tracey, she's joining us today from Asset and Reputation Protection. That is the name of her company. She is an independent agency owner. So just like us guys, she works for herself. Okay. It's just that her niche is that in the healthcare or the caring world. Am I right in saying that?
You are exactly right. The caring industry.
The caring industry. Well, Tracey, again, we have a short time this evening. And I'm going to open up with the question, what is workers' compensation insurance?
Workers' compensation insurance is actually a type of liability policy, and it actually has two parts. The first part is the employer's statutory responsibilities under the workers' compensation laws of the state that their business resides in. The second part is the liability that arises out of the work-related injuries or accidents and even disease to their employees and or independent contractors that don't fall up under Part 1. And I think that's a key part because workers' comp does and can cover employees and independent contractors.
That's actually something that is selective. It's not that the owner, the employer, has to cover their contractors, correct?
Here's the thing, it's not actually something that you actually can select, because if you have independent contractors who do not have their own workers' compensation policy, if those contractors get hurt doing work for your business, your company is legally liable for their injuries. And one of the things about workers' comp is that it provides things such as missed wages. It provides for the medical expenses to treat their injuries or their accidents or even their illness. It provides rehabilitation to bring that worker back to wholeness again. Right. Sadly, and unfortunately, sometimes we do have employees or independent contractors who die. So it does pay a death benefit, such as the funeral costs. So that's a big misconception that I'm so glad we're able to talk about, because if we're talking about protecting the business, which is the reason why I named my business Asset and Reputation Protection, is about protecting your business from possibly having a lawsuit or something. If you choose not to provide coverage for those independent contractors, you leave yourself open for a huge potential liability. And what we do know is stuff does happen. And unfortunately, I've seen it with clients where they did not have coverage for those independent contractors. And unfortunately, they are not in business today because of the lawsuits that followed.
Right. So, for a independent contractor, I was an independent contractor myself. I covered myself with workers' compensation because you never know what may happen when I'm in somebody else's building, or if I'm in my own building or whatever. And I know that a lot of people may just, take the assumption that, because I'm working for myself, I don't need it for myself. Explain that theory, Tracey.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you're working inside your company for yourself, and let's say, for instance, we're talking about the caring industry, a lot of times we're pushing, we're pulling, we're lifting, we're moving, we're carrying, we're going up and down stairs. What happens if you're 100% vested and working inside your company and you slip and fall and you have an injury that prevents you from doing the work that keeps your business viable? So if you are not able to viably keep your business going, because remember, workers' comp is going to pay for missed wages. So those missed wages, and it usually varies percentage wise based on the state. For instance, in some states, it's 66% of what your average daily rate might be. And that gets a little hairy, but so you're still able to bring in some income so that you can actually bring someone in to help keep the business afloat. So if you don't have workers' comp and you have that injury, there are a couple of things. One, you don't get those missed wages. Your medical expenses more than likely are going to have to be paid out of pocket, because when you go to the hospital or to the doctor and they say, how did this injury happen? And you say that it happened during work, your medical insurance, your personal medical insurance, does not pay for work-related injuries. Exactly. So then you have those medical expenses to contend with. So again, it goes back to protecting your assets and your reputation, both personally and professionally. So I always, always, always encourage my clients to include themselves on the workers' comp. And if they choose not to, I do ask them to sign a disclaimer that they chose not to cover themselves in the event they do have a loss. And, it could come back to bite myself.
And that is one of the areas and one of the things that, we graciously and, thank you for always being here and being supportive to our home care members, because you do take the time of explanation and education. And guys, we need that, things can be thrown at us. Oh, you need this, you need that, but it's got to make sense. So, when we are providing, those professionals and those resources, take the information, learn from that. So Tracey, and as you've been eloquently, speaking, I'm going to go a little bit further, and I'm going to ask, so why is it important for home care to have workers' compensation? Why is it important for us?
Oh, it's so important because of the various things that I mentioned, the type of work that you're doing. And one of the big reasons why workers' comp is a buzzword, if you will, in the home care or the caring industry is because it is very, 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 very sometimes expensive for some people. And everyone's perspective of expensive is different. So I want to put that caveat out there. What is comfortable for a premium for someone else is different. But the reason why that premium is different, and the reason why it's so important, is the type of work that you do. We know that usually 30% of injuries are sprains and things of that nature. And it usually occurs with like nursing assistants in the healthcare industry. So if you have staff that are going into the homes of other individuals, first thing, we don't necessarily know the lay of the land, even though we may actually have home visits. And I encourage all of my clients, if you are, this is your business, make sure you go and actually have an in-home inspection, which I'm sure most of you all do, but have a home inspection. And if you can, bring the CNAs or the home care assistants, whomever is going to be working with that particular client, so they can start to become familiar with the lay of the land, so they can prevent slips and falls, so they can prevent breaks, so they can prevent sprains and strains. The other side of that is that a lot of times when our staff is inside the homes, they are not necessarily always following the protocol. And here's why. It's not because they're being just ignoring it. It's because when we are working for someone needs help. It's our human nature to help them. So we may forget that we are not supposed to be picking someone, or we may forget that we don't have our back protection on, our brace on. And before we know it, we are helping someone, because that's why we're in this industry, to be helpful, right? So we end up with injuries that are not necessarily injuries that we want, of course, but it does happen because it's the type of industry that we're in. As you know, we have so many industries in the caring industry, from nurses, home care, and so forth. So it's very important.
And it's not just in our home care world that workers' compensation is important. it's all industries, right? Whether you're a roofer, whether you're an electrician, on the job, loss of wages is what you've said. So for us,
before we go on with that, you said something really important, and I wanted to tap into the reason why the pricing premium can be a little bit expensive, if you will. That's the only word sometimes it's not cost effective, is because of there are lots of injuries, and anytime you lose control of your staff, and when anyone is not working on your site, you do lose control. You don't know what they're doing from one moment to the next. That's one reason why the premiums are a little higher than, say, an administrative assistant who is working on site, usually sitting at her desk for 6 hours, or her desk or his desk 6 hours out of the day. So there's
exposure is less.
Exactly, like a roofer. That's a very volatile position. Someone falls from a roof, it's usually not a good injury. No injury is good.
So yeah, that's why I'm not a roofer, by the way. So
exactly.
How is the premium calculated? And again, just knowing that there's different categories, it's going based on the level of exposure to injury. How is the premiums calculated? Can we break that down in the most general form?
Absolutely. Workers' comp is driven by several things. First, it's driven by the type of industry. Of course, it's a carrying industry, so it's already an industry that has lots and lots of claims. It's also driven by claim history, not only of the business, but also the industry in general. So the carriers are going to take a homogeneous look at all of the claims of that particular industry in that particular state, in that particular city and county, and it drills down that deep for carriers. And then they're going to look at experience mods. Experience mods are driven by claims history. So if you have an experience mod, if you've ever gotten your experience modification, which I would hope that you have, because typically that's required to get a quote. If you're already in business, if you're not in business, you won't have an experience mod. But an experience mod tells carriers how much risk manage and how much you're doing to minimize risks. At least that's what they're looking at it. So if you have an experience mod that is less than 1.0, and I encourage my clients to have an experience mod that's anywhere between 0.5 and 8.80. And here's the reason why: you're going to get the bigger discounts, and you're going to get the bigger, I would say, the better pricing if you're keeping your claim, meaning that you're doing the training, to the safety training, you're doing the blood pathogen training, you're making sure that your staff has the right safety equipment, you're hosting OSHA meetings, you're doing the things, you're making sure you're going out and you're actually seeing the homes, identifying areas where there may be areas where someone might slip. Is there a piece of rug in someone's home, or a carpet that needs to be tacked down? Sharing that information with the the client, and asking if they could take care of that, because it's a possible injury waiting to happen. There's so many things that we can look at, but also from the hiring perspective, when carriers are looking at the information, payroll, claims history, based on your business industry, the locale, the city, state, and so forth, the experience mod. They're also looking at the class codes that's set up by the National Council of Compensation Insurance, and that's NCCI. They have class codes for every type of job that's out there, and it's based on the danger, if you will. It's based on the danger, if you will, of that particular job. So a roofer's rate, the class code and the rate associated with that roofer, is going to be much higher than a clerical person, because they have more propensity to have a loss than an administrative professional. So they're also looking at that. But what they're also looking at is, what are you doing from the hiring perspective to minimize hiring someone that has the possibility of having losses? For example, if you look at the application for a workers' comp, they're going to ask you questions about, do you check driving records? Do you check criminal background histories? Do you check? All of those things are very important. It's just like when we get our auto insurance, they're looking at our background. They're looking at credit records. They're looking at criminal. They are doing the same thing from workers' comp, because in their mind, someone who has a bad driving record is taking that same mentality into how they do their work. So if you're not checking off those things from the perspective of hiring, that's part of your risk management. So I encourage people to make sure they pull those things. A lot of times with carriers, they even provide discounted driving records and criminal records and things like that, so that you can actually start implementing those risk management procedures to drive your premium down. The more you do to drive your premium down, the better rate you're going to get from carriers.
Right. And all of those things, guys, let's just summarize that. It's the training, making sure you have those policies and procedures, in place. Again, they are going to look at your potential and how you're conducting your business. It's like getting a credit card. They're going to look at your credit, your credit history, and say, are you going to be somebody who I want to I want to bet on, right?
Exactly.
So just go ahead and make sure that we've got all of those things in place, guys. We are in one of those high exposed areas of business. With our caregivers, and sometimes it's not necessarily a fault, it's just literally just turning the incorrect way that could cause that that claim to be filed. So we want to most definitely be careful of that. Tracy, you have been answering so many questions of things that I'm thinking about to ask you, and you're answering them anyway. I'm going to ask this one before you even say it, okay?
Okay.
So how does a person obtain coverage?
Oh, that's a very good question. The way they do that is they reach out to an independent agent or a agent that is connected with someone. Say, as an independent agent, let me explain that, because I don't think people understand that. An independent agent means that I am not connected to a particular carrier. I have access to tons of different carriers. So I am actually working for you, not working for a carrier, which is good for you, because instead of you getting quotes for everybody that you need quotes from, you want to get 3 quotes. That's my job, so that you can focus on what you're doing. And because I know insurance, I'm going to be looking at the policy form, because the policy form is what we need to look at versus the premium. The premium may say the number that you want, but if the policy form is filled with exclusions, then we're going to have a problem. So that means you're throwing good money after bad. So in order to get that policy, you're going to work with an agent or a broker like myself, or someone with the State Farm or Hartford or whomever, who is working for that company, State Farm, their benefit.
But we're not going to talk about them, Tracy.
Right. But how you do this, but whomever. But what you're going to do is you're going to complete an application that's going to also include information regarding your payroll, because remember, workers' comp is driven by payroll. You're also going to provide loss runs, which is AKA claims history, if you currently have coverage in workers' comp. And the way that you get those loss runs, 2 ways. You can contact your current broker or agent and ask them to provide those loss runs for you, or you can contact the carrier yourself, because you should have access to that number to contact them directly and ask for your loss runs. Or you can request the help of the agent or broker, and we are more than happy to help you get those. There's a certain letter that we have you complete to request loss runs. We have to have your signature, and those loss runs are either submitted directly to you or they're submitted directly to us, one or the other. Once we gather all of that information, and I say complete your application as thoroughly as possible, because questions on those applications are very key to the carrier. They're not asking those questions to get in your business, but they need to get in your business. That makes any sense, right? Absolutely. Because they are in the business of doing business. So they're asking those questions because those are questions that there are problems or issues or concerns that have come up with other types of clients that they've had. So answer those application questions as thoroughly as you possibly can. If something does not apply, truly does not apply, please write NA. Not applicable, NA, whatever it is, those 2, and make sure that you complete that. And lastly, make sure that all of your website, your social media, all of that is saying exactly what you do, not what you want to do, but what you do. Here's why. If you say that you're a home health care agency, but you have on there that you're a staffing agency as well, red flag.
Hmm.
So what's going to happen is that they're going to get your application and they're going to look at all of that information, because remember, they're going to do their due diligence, because their job is to write a policy that's going to bring them a profit.
Yes.
So then they're going to come back to me, and then I'm going to have to come back to you and say, what's going on with this staffing thing? Are you a staffing person? And if you're not, if it's still on your website, more than likely the carrier is going to either decline, or they're going to write you up a policy that has staffing on it, because they're going to cover themselves, because it's all about protecting themselves.
Absolutely. So is workers' comp required, and is it required in all states?
It is required in all states except Texas. And there are different parameters, because every state creates their own parameters about what coverage and when coverage is needed. For instance, in DC, if you are in business, it doesn't matter if you do not have any employees at all. The moment you decide that you're going to be in business in DC, you have to have workers' compensation, even if it's just you. In Virginia, for instance, once you get 2 employees, whether part-time or full-time, you have to have workers' compensation insurance. So every state is different. However, Texas, it is not required.
Right. So do you have some kind of a grid that shows the different states, what the minimum amount of employees are before workers' comp is required? So I'm going to give you some homework now.
No, I do not, because I focus on certain states. So I don't worry about those other states, since that's not where I do business typically. So in those states, and honestly, it's so much information in every state. It is an easy find. If you get on Google and you find it, it's not that hard to find. I work in DC, Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Texas. However, if someone were to approach me and they're in Florida, and it makes sense for me to get licensed in Florida to write their coverage for them, I will do that. Right. Oh, beautiful. I will definitely check that to see what the cost is, because insurance licensing in every state is very different. For instance, it may cost me $500 in one state to be licensed, and it may cost me $75 in another state to be licensed. So I have to weigh that, because I could be licensed in every state and be spending monies, but not actually providing coverage. So that's giving away good money, if you will. So if I have an interest, I will become licensed to make sure that I can provide that coverage for those insureds that I work with.
Tracey, you have just been a fountain of information, and I know that we could probably sit and we can talk this for the next 45 minutes, and it still be new information. But as you know, everything that's good has to come to an end, right?
It does.
So I just so thank you for being and sharing that information. And again, guys, Tracey is somebody who Home Care Biz advises. We are in partnership, and we are having a professional relationship. We have referred over to Tracey in the past. Use the resources, use the knowledge, use the experience. We're going to need that. We don't want to be going out, half dressed. And unfortunately, part of us getting dressed is making sure we have the insurance coverages in place at the right time and for the right price. Right, Tracey?
I want to say one last thing. The one important thing, when your agents, we ask you for information, I promise you we're not doing it because we just want to ring your bell. That is not what we're trying to do. Carriers right now are very, very, very picky. COVID-19 has really been in their pockets, and they are looking at everything 3, 4, 10 times over. It is taking longer now to get quotes. What used to take me maybe 5 business days is now taking me 15 to 20 business days to get quotes. And I'm seeing that with my counterparts. We're all having that. We're like, what is going on? And a lot of it is because people are working from home. They don't have the access to the resources that they would normally have if they were working inside the normal offices. So I want you to take that into consideration also. Second, I also want you to remember that the information, I'm an educator. That is the biggest thing, because even if you do not do business with me, I want everyone to be able to comfortably have a intelligent, informed decision with the person that's going to provide their coverage for them. So I give a lot of information. Please take that into consideration, because we are paid by commission.
Right.
Some of them do have agent fees. I do have an agent fee because I go well above the call of duty with all of my clients. However, we're typically paid by commission. A workers' comp policy, we may make 7%, and that's a good carrier.
Wow.
If I write a general liability policy, I might make 10% on that policy.
That's a lot of policies you got to make.
Right. So if we're writing a policy and let's say the premium is $2,000, your premium is $2,000, and I make 7%. Think about how much time has gone in on the front end for us to actually get that quote for you, the back and forth that we're doing, not only with you, but also with the carriers. So when you're looking, please take that in consideration, because there is a lot of work that you all don't see, and a lot of people are doing a lot of work and they're actually not being paid for it.
I totally hear what you're saying, and I thank you for sharing that, and just being very transparent in saying, look, we do go over and above. I mean, it's not what it may seem to be that, we're racking up thousands of dollars, based on you writing a premium, writing a policy with me. So I appreciate your authenticity with that, Tracey. But right now we're going to absolutely wrap up for this evening and for this segment. Please stay here with us. Don't leave us yet. But we are going to wrap up the segment. And until next time, Tracey, I thank you. I hope all the information that has been given to our viewers today is going to be something they can take away with them. And if not, guys, we have Tracey, who is one of our preferred providers. So please make sure you reach out to her. She's one of our affiliates. She's there to help you. She's there to educate you. She's on the same team as we are. So please make use of her. So until then, my love, I thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.